You've never seen Brian Cox until this movie in the way that you see him, you know? It's a lot of Cox.
Hi, I'm Kristen Maldonado from Pop Culture Planet. It's so great to meet both of you. I'd love to start with I love the idea of sort of mixing a haunted house with also the horrifying hauntings of meeting family for the first time. And I'd love to hear kind of what inspired that story.
It's kind of inspired by a meeting of my husband's in-laws my in-laws together. We when we first started dating, they'd never met, and we said like, "Oh, let's bring them to this house in the middle of Connecticut for 3 days." We all got snowed in, and it was an amazing time, but like also like it's a very stressful first thing to happen. And we kind of said we joked like the only thing that would make this more stressful is if this house was haunted. So that's kind of where the idea came from. Everybody survived and they all love each other now, where everyone we're still married, everything.
Oh my gosh. Well, there you go, pulling from real life. I love that. And something else that I thought is just really awesome is being able to center, a queer romance at the center of horror, and having it be, just about relationships and not having it, necessarily have to be like a coming out story or anything like that. Like you're just telling a story of two people, bringing people together. So, I'd love to hear about, centering that story as well.
Well, one of the reasons I responded to it was that this couple was at the center of it, but that was it. There wasn't extra commentary about it. They were just part of the fabric of this family. And it's not that we ignore the fact that they're a same-sex couple. It factors into the plot. It factors into the haunting. It does sort of play on our prejudices a little bit thematically and prejudice in general. But it's never heavy-handed, and that's why I liked it. You get the what the story's trying to say, but you're also getting, splattered with projectile vomit, and you're jumping out of your chair, and you're hopefully laughing a little bit too.
I'd love to hear about how you built your connection.
We started through an audition process, and we had our chemistry reads on Zoom, which was its own form of funny and challenging, and we kind of hit it off, and um, yeah, then we just kind of kept hanging out and casually talking about, oh, like, how are these guys, back home when it's not them meeting their parents, how did they meet, all that sort of fun stuff. And luckily it was very easy because Nick is fun and talented and cute and sweet, and it was easy to pretend to be boyfriends.
We had such an amazing cast. Lisa Kudrow, myself, and Parker all lived in the same house. We had our separate stuff, but we just hung out nonstop. And the boys would come over. Edie lived next to us, and we would go out to eat together. We would have movie nights together. We would have game nights and cookouts and all kinds of stuff. And I think that would made this. I think all that kind of off-camera chemistry helped to bring the story to life. And I think we brought a lot of those off-camera relationships into the story, and I think it made it for a more just a more genuine and natural thing on camera.
There's like a fine line, between comedy and horror. So, what was that like for you dabbling with that?
Yeah, that was I think the most interesting part of the script that I loved, and the comedy came from these two families trying to figure each other out and deal with it, and of course the horror just heightened the. For me, it's a family movie. It's about family dynamics, and the horror just kind of heightened the issues that these two people, or these four people, six I guess altogether, had to deal with each other. And uh, I loved it. We didn't get to see much of the horror because that's added in later. So we kind of had to imagine it on the set, what was going on. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh, it really felt like me, a cool, like things, 80s kind of horror flick,
Um,
and I loved it. So
oh, I love that. Yeah, that is so funny because it's like, yes, the horror of the haunted house, but also there could be a little bit of a horror meeting the parents too.
Well, that's what I loved about it. And toward the end, Cliff's like, okay, it's tough enough, tough enough. When Brian Cox shows up naked, didn't need to see his ass, but I did. Uh, and I think Cliff still said, you know what? Even though he's possessed, I'm the guy who's going to try to make this work.
I feel like this movie does such a good job of mixing the two genre and such a specific tone. That's like, I think, really hard to do. Like if you do it, it's so great. But it's like, yeah, is it horror or is it comedy? Like, like where are you invested? And then, where are you taken for a ride where you're like, literally about to poop in your pants? And then where are you laughing the next second, because something said is so human.
The script blends horror and comedy so well, and the demon possession is such a great metaphor for the family conflict, and there's nothing more terrifying than meeting your partner's parents, and to kind of add a possessed Brian Cox to the mix was just like brilliant and was such a fun thing to do.
There was so many funny moments, from, accidentally revealing secrets you're not supposed to showing up unannounced. I'd love to hear just about how you sort of, developed your character. And I loved that she really had this journey of, being able to share that, this was sort of her found family, so to speak, because she didn't have one of her own. So
just access me. No, I'm just kidding. I have way more boundaries than Sarah, for sure. Yeah, I adore Sarah. I relate to her so much. She's kind of the person I wish I could be, if I felt slighted or if I wanted to go to a party, but I wasn't invited, I just invite myself and show up and expect there's a room waiting for me, that kind of, I wouldn't say entitled. It's kind of just declaring space for herself where she feels like unseen or, if she feels invisible. I mean, she's so rooted by this deep desire to connect and to feel belonged. She wants to be part of this family. Rohan and Josh are her family of choice, and they can't possibly, have this family gathering without her. So yeah, like I adore how kind of fearless she is and like kind of reaching for her loved ones. And also she'll protect and go to bat. She will fight a 400-year-old demon for you. She will be there and she's got your back. So I admire that.
What was it like sort of bringing the horror elements to life, like this demon? And, was that stuff that you were able to see on set or things you had to imagine?
Oh, yeah.
You've
never seen Brian Cox until this movie in the way that you see him, It's a lot of Cox. Being human is so horrifying and humiliating. Wanting to be loved or connected or trying to create family is horrifying. And, people are like not in your control. Everyone thinks differently. They come from different ways. I'm very much like our reality, I think art has such a fun way of like mirroring this horror that we have in our daily lives. So it's like that kind of internal horror is something that you can easily access because you're like, oh, I come to that, like I face hate all the time, in my life. And then to have this kind of exterior, like this kind of actual physical embodiment of hate or generational trauma or this dark demon, that's old and just omnipresence in this house. It's something that it's like such a fun social satire because and you're like, well, how are we gonna fight this? Are we gonna like be, have like fight amongst ourselves, or are we gonna come together and actually, fight this demon? And I think like, yeah, watching humans like do this is like really funny to me. It's horrifying and scary because it's like, it's a demon. There's zombies and ghosts and things so out of your control. It's so magnified in sort of like the terror of it all. But so are humans, we can't control each other, and that's also terrifying.
Part of constructing a horror movie or suspense film is the buildup. And I loved how Kent's script started with all the typical things, little bumps in the night and doors closing, but then he'd have this hilarious twist on it. Like the bumps that you hear are not automatically instantly scary. You think maybe, oh, are our parents having sex in the next room? I loved all those twists on kind of the scary stuff as it built up. And then I loved, we learn the story of who this demon is later in the movie, but then there's also other ghosts running around. There's more poltergeisty elements. There's demon dogs. There's all kinds of creepy things happening, and I love all of it.
I'd also love to hear, just if there was a more challenging scene to bring to life, with all of these different elements and ghosts and creatures.
Definitely the finale. Everyone's outside. There's all these grand reveals. There's visual effects. There's fire, special effects, and there's every actor in the whole movie is there. And when we shot it, it was freezing cold. It was very early in our shoot schedule. It was all overnights. So I was stressed out. I'd never done a scene that big before in my career. So I really was feeling the pressure there. But everyone was fantastic, and the cast was great, and we pulled it off. And the rest of the movie, well, I wouldn't say it was the easy, but it was, I could breathe easier having done the finale.
Technically, some things become challenging, that big fire at the end, like that actually was fairly challenging. It wasn't particularly warm outside. It involved a lot of choreography and practical effects and safety and camera positioning and movements. And each time the camera has a different setup, like each of our things has to change in a very minor technical way. And so some of that stuff can be a little like, okay, how do I think of all this stuff? Mind you, it's also like the intense emotional moment of the film. So still really fun.
And I loved how your character, was very musical. And I know you both have like backgrounds in theater. And I was just curious for myself, like what's like a future dream role on stage for each of you?
That's a great question. My most recent stage experience was Waitress on Broadway, and I am not a singer. And it was probably the most terrifying thing I've ever done. And so whatever I do next, I really hope I don't have to sing.
I literally just wrapped a play on Sunday where I played Marlon Brando, which also was very, very scary. But I keep coming up against Peter Shaffer did Amadeus, and it's such a fun role, and I would love to play Amadeus.
I will add, there is a play coming out in a few months called Prince Faggot that I'm very excited to see, and it's like one of those shows where it's like dream role type things, and so I'm just excited to see what happens with it. And coincidentally,
that's my husband's play.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So
The little shout outs.
It's so good. It's genuinely so good. It's like dream role level good. Like it's so good.
Oh, I love that. All right, so we're putting this out for both of you. Consider subscribing if you like this video and get even more entertainment news at popcultureplanet.net. See ya!